a warrior, a survivor, and it's all because of God. She's a teacher and a healer, and it's all because of God. She's sassy, full of fire, with a heart that's made of gold. She will help you build your body, and it's so good for your soul.
Hi there. Welcome to Life Unleashed with TLC, your host, Traci Lynn Cowan. We have an exciting day for us here on studio, on set, and I am really excited to introduce not only my friend, as well as a woman that I really admire and look up to. And Heather Brown, I met last year, and I have just fallen in love with her as this beautiful friendship grows. And every day she seems to amaze me with her stories and her strength and her experience and her hope and just everything that she's shared with me so far. And she's not only a super successful trial attorney, she's also was a DA for Orange County for many, many years. She is a mother, a wife, and she is a phenomenal friend. And I'd like to introduce Heather Brown to the show.
Hi.
Hey.
Thanks for having me.
I know, it's exciting. Episode 1. Of course I'd have you.
I am honored. I'm so excited to be here, and I really am honored that you had me on your first episode.
Thank you. Well, we usually have a lot of fun, and I'm sure that's where it's going to go today. So I want to share with everybody who Heather Brown is. And a lot of people know you as Downtown Heather Brown. She's a world famous podcaster now. And we're also going to talk about Defeating the Darkness, her podcast. And not only that, we're going to share a little bit more into the episode about her book as well that's coming out too. So Defeating the Darkness there too. So congratulations on all your successes this year so far already.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
So I know Heather Brown as this, strong attorney and mother and great wife and everything else and fitness fanatic like me. And I want to talk a little bit about the part that I don't know. So I know, growing up, what was life like for you and how did you become an attorney? How did all that transpire for you? How did you become into your field that you're in?
Wow. Well, that is definitely a loaded question that has a very long story behind it.
Right.
A story, and it's a story that a lot of people, when I tell them, they're like, "Oh my God, you should write a book." And I just don't have the time. But I'll give you the Reader's Digest version.
Okay.
Let's see. When I grew up in a very small town in Massachusetts, in the Berkshires. It's like 3 hours west of Boston. And it's just a very small mill town where everybody knows everybody. Mm-hmm. And, think like lifted trucks and big hair. Okay, big hair all around. I had the biggest hair, I think, of anyone in the entire high school back then. And this was, obviously growing up, I was born in the, 1970. So we're talking when I was in high school, it was in the 1980s and such. Yeah. But prior to even high school, I had kind of a tumultuous history. When I was young, very young, my father, when my parents were married, my dad was a slugger. He used to, hit my mom and us kids. And I have 2 older brothers. And my dad would hit us on a regular basis. And he was a very angry, kind of violent man. And my parents got divorced when I was 5. And then my dad actually moved to Georgia. And they lived in Florida for a bit too. But some of my memories as a kid were, we would live with my mom during the school year and my dad in the summer. Okay. And he had gotten married and had a new family in Georgia, and my brothers and I slept in the garage. Mm-hmm. Think about the summer in Georgia in the garage. It was hot, and there were huge bugs, and we just kind of felt like the stepkids, even though we weren't the stepkids because we were banished to the garage. And we had summers there, and there were water moccasins, and I just have a lot of memories from being a kid there. And some of my fondest moments of my dad were the times where I thought I was going to get beat and he didn't hit me. I had fallen into some poison ivy one time Like I was chasing my brothers and I went over a fence and I actually broke my arm, and they called my dad home from work, and I was like, don't call my dad, don't call my dad, he's going to beat me. And when he came home, he was so concerned about me that I was so relieved. Another time we went to Six Flags over Georgia. He used to take us to amusement parks, and I remember getting lost, and I turned around, and I was really young, 6 or 7, and I got lost from my dad, and I literally had this moment where I thought, he's gonna beat the crap out of me when he finds me for getting lost. And so I thought, I might as well go on a few rides. So I went and I rode some rides, and then I finally turned myself into the lost and found. But he was so relieved to find me that I didn't get beat. So those were like my fond memories of my dad, and which is sad and pathetic when you think about it now. But fast forward, when I was 9 years old, my dad committed suicide. And so needless to say, my mom, who at the time was, bartending and working, she worked at a radio station. She was doing all kinds of things to get by. She, raised my brothers and I on her own. And so we were like wild little hellions, I'd like to say.
Right.
And unbeknownst to anyone at the time, my mom was, working a bunch of jobs to get by, and my next door neighbor, at the time when we were little, was molesting me, and I kept it a secret. I never told anybody. Okay. And honestly, had I told somebody, my brothers would have ripped that guy apart from limb to limb. My mom would have shot him. Like, my mom would have killed the guy. But I never told anybody until I was about 18. And so I just tell you this little backstory because, I was raised to be pretty scrappy. Right. And my brothers and I would, if people said things we didn't like, we would like fight. It was just kind of very small town mentality. And so when it came time for me to go to college. The one thing I was blessed with was my mother's intelligence. My mom was like one of the smartest people I've ever known. Yeah. And so she passed those smart genes down to my brothers too. My brothers are really just, born smart. And they were like the smartest kids in the whole town. And so when I didn't apply myself because I was like a hooligan. I was, when I was like 16 years old, I was dating this parolee, and, I would lie to my mom and tell her I was babysitting, and I was looking for love in all the wrong places.
Do you think you were a hooligan just because of your circumstances, the way you were raised?
Well, definitely. I didn't have like a positive male role model, right? My dad was abusive. The next door neighbor was molesting me. Right? Like I had daddy issues, to say the least. Right? And I think that's where a lot of people's issues down the road stem from.
Right. And I can relate with that for sure, because that was the same thing for me too. And we have a lot in common. And, I kind of knew that, but it was always never that point where I would sit and ask you, because we're always been in such great moments where maybe we're at church together or just having a nice time together. And so I can really relate to that, because people go, well, why were you so bad? Or why were you, like you say, a hooligan? But, when you're living in an environment like that and you're trying to run from it, that's how it comes out in life. So I can definitely relate to that. Yeah, no, for sure. And, I see that in a lot of people. A lot of people have a backstory. If someone just takes the time to ask them. And, I'm certainly no different than most of my friends that I know of, but I think people perceive someone who in their later years is somewhat successful and confident that, maybe haven't had to overcome anything. And I find that's the opposite with most people, that they actually do have a backstory that made them that confident and made them that resilient. Absolutely. So when you were deciding to go to college and you wanted to go and do your schooling and stuff like that, because of your experience being molested, were you like, I am going to take this and run with it, and I'm just gonna, what was the decision for you? What were you thinking when you decided to get into that field? Well, it started absolutely the opposite, because I was very sympathetic. Like I said, I was 16 and I was seeing this parolee, and
you know, I was raised very liberal, Mom. I'm busting you on that one, but you know, I was raised to be very, you know, which is great, forgiving. That's wonderful, but you know, I was so in over my head. I had no idea what I was doing, right? I just thought the guy looked cool, and he looked like Robert De Niro, and he drove some souped up Chevy Nova Super Sport. So I was like all in. And I remember he got angry with me because I talked to my ex-boyfriend one day. So he punched the wall at my house and broke his arm. And I took him to the hospital, and he had a cast on his arm. And so I was like hanging out with some other, you know, friend of mine. I told my mom I was babysitting her daughter, and he was kind of following me through the night at this like fair. And I had no idea like that this guy was a drug addict. I wasn't exposed to drug addicts. Yeah, you know, that was the one thing I wasn't exposed to. Okay. Right. So I just had no idea. And he was much older than me. I think he was like 26. And I told him I'd meet him at my girlfriend's house at like midnight. And when I showed up, he like jumped out of the bushes, and he clocked me so hard with the cast on his arm. I saw stars. I had never been hit so hard in my entire life.
Wow.
I just remember that moment, you know, just that force to my head. And I thought, oh my God, like I was so in over my head. And he started throwing boxes around and was tearing up my friend's house. And so I was like, you know what? I was trying to survive at that moment and get myself out of the situation. And then I remember my girlfriend called me, and she was the one whose house I was at. And she was like, she could hear him yelling in the background. And she asked me, do you want me to call the police? Do you want me to call the police? And I was like, no, I'll handle it. Because in my 16-year-old brain, I thought, if this guy gets arrested and goes to jail, when he gets out, he's going to come kill me.
Right.
And so I just wanted to handle the situation. So I begged him to leave my friend's house. And I got in the car with him, and he took me to the cemetery. Okay, my mom thought I was babysitting. Sorry, Mom, if you're listening.
Gosh.
I was not babysitting. I lied. But the statute of limitations is run. But fast forward, she ended up, he brought me to the cemetery, and because my ex-boyfriend that I had broken up with to go out with this guy.
Okay.
His brother had recently been killed in a car accident and was buried there. So he brought me to like the grave site and was like, you want to be with that family so bad, you know, get the F out, right? So I got out of the car.
Wow.
And now I was running through the cemetery thinking, oh my God, my mom thinks I'm babysitting. And he chased me through the cemetery, and he caught me, and he stuck me in his car, and then he took me to his dad's attic, and he made me sleep in the attic. And then he started coming down from the drugs. And so he was like petting me and telling me everything's going to be okay. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And I was like, it's no big deal. Don't worry about it. But at the time I was a chambermaid. I used to clean rooms at the Hilton Hotel. And so I told him, bring me to the hotel. And if I'm not there, I start at 6 a.m. If I'm not there, you know, by 5:30, they'll call my house, and my mom will call the police if I didn't show up to work. And so
good thinking.
He brought me to the hotel, and then that was the end of it. But going back to your original question was, I honestly, in my mind, when I was young, I thought, you know, all of these criminals like him didn't have the tools to assimilate back into society once they were released from prison. That's kind of how I felt. Like he had been so institutionalized from being in prison that when he got out, like he was always talking about respect, and you don't respect me. And it was prison talk. And so I thought I wanted to be a parole officer and like help these criminals assimilate back into society. So that was kind of where I was going with my career. Well, first I wanted to be a travel agent because I thought if I became a travel agent, I could get really cheap tickets.
Which is true. You're not incorrect about that.
And, you know, I think they're obsolete now with the internet. But back in the day, you had to go get, you know, through a travel agent to get tickets to places. But I had a teacher who, at the junior college I was going to, who pulled me aside and was like, what are you doing at the school? You're, you know, I've never seen you open your book. And I just couldn't afford my books, so I never even bought them.
Right.
And so I ended up finding my way out to California from this 2-year junior college in Massachusetts. And I was going to be a parole officer. And I was, I was getting my degree in psychology and sociology. And I started volunteering at the probation department.
Okay.
And
did you like it right off the bat? How did you feel?
I thought it was fascinating.
Okay.
Until like I had this girl like throw up on me because she had drank Drano because someone told her that if she'd be
released on medical release or something.
I was working in the narcotics testing unit.
Okay.
And so as the probation officer, you have to make sure that like the urine tests are theirs.
Okay.
So I'd have to, like, my assignment was to watch these people pee in a cup. Okay. So I thought, oh my gosh, this is what my life is,
like,
right?
Nope, didn't sign up for this.
But just, they were all on drug testing.
Okay.
And so for the court would get the report. And so as I was working, this girl, someone told her if she drank Drano that it would, her drug test would come back negative, right? It would clear all the drugs out of her urine.
Right. And kill you, probably.
Yeah, they forgot to mention and kill you. And so she obviously, just all of a sudden projectile vomited all over. And I was like, okay, wow. And people would bring in like contraptions, like fake penises and stuff. And I mean, it was wild. And at that moment, when I was a young person, I thought, oh, wow, all these people are drug addicts and alcoholics. Mm-hmm. Maybe if I become an alcohol and drug counselor, I can help save the world that way.
Right.
And so I started getting certified as an alcohol and drug counselor.
Okay.
And so then you have to do like 600 hours. Mm-hmm. So I was working at St. John's Hospital in the Chemical Dependency Center.
Okay.
And I was doing like group counseling to drug addicts. And I was also waiting tables.
Okay.
And I had this is where my epiphany moment came to become an attorney. So I was working at the restaurant, and the night manager, Jim Dutton was his name. He said to me one night when I was closing up, because I used to like jump up on my soapbox and say, "You listen here, Jim," and I'd give him a piece of my mind about whatever it was I was interested in at the moment. And he said, you love to argue so much. Have you ever thought about being an attorney?
Oh, wow. Okay.
And it was that seed that was planted. And I was like, no, like it had never entered my mind. Mm-hmm. And then fast forward, I was at this group counseling session and I looked around at the people in this group. And this one lady, after listening to her for weeks on end, I just looked at her and thought, oh my God, if I had you for a mother, I would be shooting up heroin too, right? And then I looked at the next guy and he was like eating a scab off of his hand. And
oh, geez.
I just went around the room and I really was very disheartened and kind of just sickened by the manipulation of people and how people were so capable of doing horrible things to their own family that I thought in that moment, every one of you should be locked up and have the keys thrown away. I did.
And there it was.
And then I thought, oh shit, now I got to go to law school. I thought I'm going to become a DA and now I got to go to law school. So that was where the whole plot and plan to become a lawyer was hatched.
Interesting. Yeah, I also have the background of drug and alcohol counseling as well.
Oh, really?
And it's very interesting what you see in there, and you learn a lot from other people. I didn't have the honor of being thrown up on, but as a parole officer. Well, that's so interesting. I mean, I know that you have so many stories as a DA. What was one of the most memorable stories that you remember being as a district attorney for Orange County?
Oh, gosh. Well, there's many.
Yeah.
Gosh, do you want one that I haven't told on my podcast yet? Or do you want...
Yeah, you know what? Let's go with something different. I want to talk about one of your experiences so the audience and viewers can understand to what level and what degree you are dealing with people. And I know that you were very successful as a district attorney, and I know you put away a lot of child molesters and things like that.
Yeah. So, when I shared with you about my neighbor, I guess I should give a little backstory. When I share with you about my neighbor and what he used to do to me, I never told anybody until I was about 18. I called my mom, and she on the payphone. It was back in the 80s,
Back in
the
the day.
1900s. And my mom told me that this guy had died. And I was like, oh my God, that disgusting pig. And that's when I first told my mom about it. And then I kind of felt guilty my whole life that I never told anybody, because I thought this guy had like a little playground in his basement that would lure all the neighborhood kids over. And I just thought, how many kids got molested after me? And so I tell you that because God placed me not only as a district attorney, but in a position where I was in the sexual assault unit, and that's where I thrived in my career. I was the prosecutor for 24 years, but 10 of those years was spent in a federally funded grant caseload where I was prosecuting child molesters.
Wow.
And all the victims that I dealt with were 10 and under. And I had some adult cases as well, but the bulk of my career was in prosecuting child molesters. And I took great pleasure in that job. And I ended up moving on to the homicide unit, and then up until I retired a couple years ago. But really, the majority of my trial experience was in the sexual assault unit, and I had tons of crazy cases.
Right.
I prosecuted not just parents, stepdads, uncles,
Right.
but some high profile cases involving priests and pastors and doctors, and I mean, you name it.
Wow.
They come in every shape and size. So that's really where my passion lies. But within that, I mean, I think one of the most memorable cases is probably I had a defendant who I wasn't going to file the case. It was a really hard case to prove, and the way it was written up in the police report just it wasn't anything the police officer did or didn't do in the summary, but when I read the report, the covert call, right, which is, where our victim made a call while the police were listening and recording.
Okay.
The summary of the covert call was such that I didn't get all the little details within that call, okay? And so I had actually filled out a rejection, a refusal, because it was a crime that had happened years ago.
Okay.
But the girl the victim was now 28 years old.
Okay.
And her stepdad had molested her from the time she was 9 until she was 15. And she was going to take that to her grave, kind of like I was going to.
Right.
And what happened was she had had a baby, and she had come on hard times, so she moved back in with her mom and her stepdad. So she was a grown woman with a child now. And he was such a jerk off that he was like taunting her and telling her what a loser she is. Like, you're such a loser. You got to move back home with your mom, and, just ripping on her. And she was thinking to herself, are you kidding me right now? Right? Like, you're such a piece of crap, and what you did to me all those years. So she got sick of him, and she said, if you don't shut your mouth, I'm going to tell mom what you used to do to me. And she was never going to mention it. She never mentioned it to him, and was never going to tell anybody. And so he just kept chipping away at her. So finally her mom walked in the room, and it burst.
Wow.
And she said,
good for her.
And she told her mom, hey, Eddie used to molest me from the time I was 9 until I was, 15. Might even have been 16. And the mom felt like she'd been hit in the face with a 2x4.
I can imagine.
She was like, what? And they had just celebrated like their 20th wedding anniversary in Hawaii. And so the mom was like, what? And the daughter just burst into tears, and she ran into her bedroom. And so the mom went to the pervert and was like, is this true? Is what she's saying true? And his response was, in times like this, one would understand if you were to, side with your daughter. And she goes, you
wow.
didn't, yeah, we call that a clue. That's, yeah. So he was like, she said, you didn't answer my question. Did you or did you not do this to my daughter? And he, in times like this, one would understand if you were to side with the daughter.
Oh, he just kept going on.
Yeah, he
with
kept
that.
saying that.
Okay.
And then the third time he said no. So she went and talked to the daughter. So the daughter didn't want anything done. And so mom kicked him out. And then fast forward, he wanted to see the daughter. They had adopted a daughter together as well.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And she was still underage. And so he had moved out, but he wanted to see her. And the mom was like, yeah, no. And he's like, well, there's nothing you can do to stop me, because he hadn't been arrested. And so the mom basically begged the daughter, please, will you, report this to the police? Otherwise, he's going to be able to see your daughter. Yeah, I mean, your sister. Your sister. So she did it. She did the covert call. I got the case for filing. Obviously it was an out of custody filing. And I was going to refuse it, because the way the covert call was summarized was that he didn't make any admissions, but he just said, I'm so sorry for everything that's gone down. I'm so sorry for everything that's gone down. And he never really admitted to anything. And it was so long ago. And, you got to be able to prove a case beyond a reasonable doubt to 12 people. And so I just didn't think we could prove it. So I had written a refusal on that.
Okay.
Signed off to lack of sufficient evidence, one-on-one, no corroboration. And as I was leaving work, I thought, I'm going to listen to this covert call. And I grabbed the tape, the cassette tape.
It wasn't an 8-track. You're good.
No, it was a cassette tape from my car, and I listened to it. And after listening to the covert call, that was a very big lesson for me as a DA. I always, from then on, listened to every single audio. I listened, rather than just a summary, I listened to the audio tape, and he made some statements where he said, meet with me. I want to meet with you, like in person. I thought, somebody's accusing you of molesting them and you want to meet with them in person?
Yeah, that's not.
No.
Big red flag.
And then she said, if you just tell me you're sorry and, for these things you did, and she delineated exactly what he had done to her, I'll tell mom I lied about the whole thing. And he said, so you'll be the liar in all this? And she said, yes. And he said, what guarantees do I have? And I was like, oh no, he's so guilty. I can prove this. So I filed that case.
Okay.
I went to trial, and he was still out of custody. I asked the court to take him into custody. He remained out of custody while the jury was deliberating. They came back.
Okay.
Guilty, guilty, guilty.
Oh, I love that.
Yay.
I love that.
And then he was allowed to remain out of custody until the sentencing.
Okay.
And because his attorney had asked the court to allow him to stay out. And I thought, this guy's gone. He's gone. There's no way. He was just convicted of multiple sex offenses.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so I literally said, I texted the defense attorney, how far into Mexico do you think Eddie is by now, right? I thought he's going to flee the minute he walks out from here. And I told the daughter, hey, in the event Eddie kills himself, I want you to know this is not your fault. And the reason I said that was because when he was first arrested, they had found a suicide note in his car.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And so I thought he might kill himself. Anyway, I got a call later that night from the bailiff saying, hey, I just wanted you to know we got a really weird phone call from a friend of Eddie's who said that he called her saying, I'm going to jump. And the friend was like, what? And then the phone went dead. So I was like, what is happening? Jump bail? Yeah. I didn't know if he meant jump bail and I'm fleeing to Mexico.
So what did he do?
Well, I called the mom and said, can you and your daughter just find somewhere else to stay tonight? Because I'm concerned. I don't know what this guy's capable of.
Exactly.
And, he's just been convicted because of your testimony. And so, get to a safe place. And then I thought, did I do the right thing? I didn't know. Yeah. I was relatively new in the unit. So I called my boss and I said, hey, I told them to go find a place to stay. Should I have like put them up in a hotel room? Like what, you know, did I do the right thing? And she's like, he's not the guy who threw himself off the 9th floor of the courthouse, is he? And I was like, what?
Oh, wow.
And so she goes, yeah, some dude just tossed himself off the 9th floor of the courthouse today. And I go, well, I was at a different courthouse. But I go, but North Court's only like 3 stories high. So I called the Santa Ana Police Department, my friends there, and I was like, hey, what happened over there? And they're like, oh, some guy who was convicted of child molest up at North Court today tossed him. So he had gone to Central Justice Center, and he threw himself off the 9th floor. Splat. So, yeah. And I'm confessing this right now that I had people calling me like, are you okay? And I'm like, am I okay? I'm fantastic. Like the guy got the death penalty. That's what I know that sounds crass, but the taxpayers didn't have to pay to house him. And I was happy because, and I actually have to say, I got many more phone calls after that from other victims of his that hadn't come forward, said, hey, I saw in the paper, he used to molest me too. So good riddance is my point of view. But anyway, so that was a very memorable case to me because obviously, and then, you know, everything kind of spun out from there because he is not the first defendant that I have convicted who's killed himself.
Yeah, so I know. You have another one. That's the one you told me about.
Oh yeah, I have a few. You know, it's so terrible. They jokingly call me the Brown Widow, you know, because my last name's Brown, because I had a jumper, him, the one I just told you about, Eddie was the jumper. I have a throat slasher. I have a hanger, as someone who hung themselves after I convicted him.
Right.
So yeah, I prosecute and then I kill. Anyway, no, it's terrible, but
is that your tagline?
That's my tagline. I know I'm terrible, but I shouldn't be laughing about it, but you know, gallows humor, it comes with the territory, baby. It just does.
Yeah, I mean, that's a serious profession. And I mean, you have to feel so many different things. And I don't know because I'm not in your shoes. And I know I'm grateful that you've been able to prosecute people like that because obviously being through stuff like that in my past, in my childhood, it's praise God. We have people like you that can put these people where they, well, maybe not to that extent, but for some people,
I specialize in the death penalty.
Right. So how do you get through your stress, Heather? I mean, dealing with stuff like that, I mean, you're getting satisfaction by prosecuting them. Let's talk about ones that maybe didn't, kill themselves after and things like that. How do you handle getting that emotion off of you? How do you handle that stress and just dealing with that?
Well, you know, I haven't always handled it well. I'll be honest. Tequila has been a comforter.
It's always a good clutch. Yeah,
it's always a good clutch. No, I mean, and that's honest. It's my honest answer, but it's not the healthiest, obviously. You know, a lot, and that's the sad truth. There's a lot of people will turn to alcohol or something, but at the time when I was in that unit, there were points where it was just too much for me to bear. And it wasn't just, it wasn't so much the stress of it, which was great. Don't get me wrong, because if you screw up or you don't do a good job, I felt the weight of the world at that time because if I screw up or didn't do the best that I could do and get a conviction, I felt like this molester is going to go molest more kids.
Oh, yeah. I can see that.
Like it was different stress in the homicide unit.
Okay.
It was just because I do think that somebody could kill one person and not kill more. Yes. Not if you're a serial killer, but like if you kill your wife because you catch her in bed with someone else or something like that. Right. It doesn't mean you're going to go and kill more people.
Yeah,
but a molesters always molest more people. So I felt this enormous pressure to be successful and to convict the bad guys. I did. But what was to me the hardest part was for 10 years, I thought about, read about, and watched videotapes of little kids getting raped and sodomized. Okay. Just even now talking about the dark, we can't even tell the details of every story because they're heavy. Nobody wants to hear them. And for me, when you see images and, you know what someone's done to a little child. It's heavy. And when you come home and you're supposed to just like make dinner and, play Rummy Cube and have fun with your family, right?
Yeah.
Those thoughts and those images, they continue to play in your mind.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And so you want to do everything you can to like stop thinking about what you've been thinking about all day.
True.
That's the part that's the thing that I had the most difficulty with, was turning off my brain and thinking about something else. And so I would have, tequila every night to stop thinking about it. And it was effective. Sometimes I would just go to sleep, but it was effective. And that was the other thing. Sometimes I would lay at bed at night thinking about it.
Yeah.
And so if I would drink a little tequila or, a lot of tequila, I'd go to sleep just to stop my brain from thinking about it. But then I became better at coping over the years and realized like this isn't healthy. This isn't doing it's doing me a disservice. And so
now you've incorporated fitness. I mean, the good thing too is when you look at it, we learn from that. And obviously I use coping skills that were not something that you'd want to keep doing in your life. And so having fitness in your life, and that's such a good thing, because I know Heather's so motivated and I love that because we work out together and I always see, even to just showing up at 6 a.m. I mean, not a lot of people will do that. So having that dedication, even if you're tired, even if you've had a stressful night, things like that. And that's why it's so important to share with people, even no matter what we go through or what we're going through. I believe health and wellness and fitness is so important to get us through each and every day, because without that, we just really go back to those devices and those clutches that aren't unnecessarily healthy for us. So fitness has been a big thing for you. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, 100%. No, fitness has been great. And I've made a lot of great friends along the way in my fitness journey, if you will, because I would find a friend and I'd go hiking. Right. And then I'd have that, friendship along the way while we're hiking and learn more about somebody else. I think focusing on someone else other than your own self is a huge way, So we often just get stuck in thinking about our own lives and what we're doing. But if you can think about someone else, or focus the attention on the other person, that's been a great tool. Yeah. I also, I just think having authentic conversations with other people and laughing, to me, there's nothing that brings me out of what I was thinking about than my crazy friends. I have some really amazing, fun, loving friends who love to have a good time and joke and tell stories. And I just love listening to other people's stories and hear, people are like, what are you working on? I'm like, let's not talk about that. Let's talk about you. What are you doing? And so I do love, I think authentic relationships and conversations is a great tool that people don't lean on enough.
Yeah. And what I love too is because people look at you and they go, oh, she's a strong, powerful woman, and people would be intimidated by you. I remember, I'll share quickly how we met, and we met at a charity event, and it was for crime survivors, and something made me gravitate towards Heather, and I stood there like a little girl for probably like a good solid 10 minutes, and I have no idea. I was just like, I have no idea why I'm standing here, and I probably look really stupid, and I feel I was kind of feeling like a little like stalkerish in this at one point. And then Heather turned and she looked at me and she just gave me this look and this smile. And she must have seen the look in my eyes, because I kind of felt like a little kid. And she must have seen this look in my eyes, because she actually stopped this important conversation she was having. I think it was like the mayor or something. And I didn't know who it was because I'm new to Orange County. And so I looked over and Heather looked at me and she went, and I saw the look in your eye. You went, she really needs to talk to me. And you made that effort to come talk to me. And it was just this beautiful connection. And I think that's what's so important and missing in a lot of friendships and a lot of people's lives right now, is that authenticity and that fun and just taking the time out to make time for other people, even when you're busy, because so many people are so busy and distracted by their phones and distracted by their lives and what's going on and things like that. So I really appreciated that. And I think that's what bonded us together so quickly as well. And then, having Bible study and doing things like like that are also very nurturing for the soul as well. Let's talk about defeating the darkness. So obviously we don't want to get back into too much of, those things, but I know that you have a podcast out right now and you've had some incredible guests. I know that you've been doing it since last September and you've had some incredible guests on there and your book. So tell us a little bit about the book and where we can find it.
Okay, well, my podcast, Defeating the Darkness, True Crime Stories with Downtown Heather Brown. You can listen and follow and subscribe on YouTube, iTunes, iHeartRadio, and Spotify.
Right.
You can watch it also. It's a hopeful message. Obviously, there's true crime stories like the one I told today.
Yes.
But it's really highlighting people that are working to help people in the darkest places. When, going through either if you're a victim of a, horrible crime, like a murder, your mom's been murdered or a family member, or you've been a victim of domestic violence, or you've been trafficked, or,
Right.
I'm just trying to lift up people who are working hard and using what's happened to them to shine, light either on a topic or bring light to another person. I think that's the best thing that you can do with something that's happened to you. And that's where I've kind of found my purpose in life is using what happened to me when I was young and all the experiences I had, which can sound like, oh, that's terrible, to have your dad commit suicide or be molested. But really, everything that's ever happened to me has made me who I am today and helped me to help other people.
Exactly.
And I love helping other people because it makes me stop thinking about myself, right? It puts the focus on the other person.
That's right.
And when you see that what happened to you was not in vain, that you've been able to help someone out of their pain, there's no greater feeling. Then it was like, oh, I'm actually glad that happened to me because I was able to help someone get out of their pain. And so that's what I'm highlighting on the show, but with humor, gallows humor. It's fun. We tell crazy stories. I have a zillion friends and people I've met along the way that have a lot of great stories. And so I bring them on the podcast, and then also the book. I work now as special counsel for a civil firm called Fight for Survivors. It's a law firm, and we litigate cases against the schools, organizations, and institutions, and churches, if you will, that cover up child sexual abuse. Good. And so I wrote this book based on a bunch of stories, true survivor stories that I have encountered in my career as a prosecutor and working in the civil firm. And really, it's kind of like a tool book for victims of sexual abuse to go from victim to survivor and use what's happened to them and use the justice system to try to heal from what's happened to them by sharing their story. I don't mean on a podcast. I just mean reporting it and going and seeing if they have a legal remedy civilly. Because a lot of people don't realize that they do.
I was going to say, what's the biggest thing for us to share with viewers and listeners if they're in that situation, if it's a family member, it's a friend, or somebody that notices that there's something going on that needs to be reported? And is there something that, like a hotline they call? Is there something that, we can give them a golden little nugget and say, hey, you know what, if you're in this position, or somebody that you care about is in this position, this is how we can help?
Yeah, I think the best advice I could give on that note is if you know someone who's being molested, or someone confides in you that they're being molested, a lot of people don't know how to react to that, right? Like, oh, I'm sorry. But I think the best thing that you could do is believe them. Okay.
Right.
Like, why didn't you tell anybody? When you ask that question, that first question out of your mouth is kind of sending a message to them, especially if it's a child.
Yeah.
Right? If a child reports to you that they've been molested, especially if it's a family member, how the adult responds is crucial to what's going to happen from there and whether that child's going to disclose more. So I think the biggest tip about like someone who's been molested as a child, if someone reports that to you, as the adult, to let them know that you believe them.
Right.
And say,
so they don't shut down, right?
So they don't shut down. If you start peppering them with questions
Mm-hmm.
or, oh my God, why didn't you tell me? Or, that kind of thing. And usually children will test the waters ahead of time and try to tell you a little thing. Like, hey, I'm uncomfortable when Uncle so-and-so kisses me. And we as adults will always be like, oh, it's just your uncle. That's what they do.
Right.
Oh, the coach makes you uncomfortable when he, pats your butt. That's what guys do.
Yeah.
If you, for lack of a better word, poo-poo what they're saying to you, when they come to you with something little, they're never going to tell you about the big thing.
Got it. Okay, that's important.
That's really important.
Okay.
And then when they do confide in you, their biggest fear is that A, they won't be believed, and B, if it's someone they know and they love and they trust, like the favorite teacher or the coach or their father or their uncle or their stepdad, and there are women that molest kids too, but it's much more rare, then they're worried that person's going to get in trouble. Mm-hmm. Okay? That's their biggest fear and why kids don't disclose. So if you, as the adult, can empower them and say, hey, listen, not like we need to nail this guy to the wall. What you say is, you can always tell your children, sometimes adults have a problem with touching children and we need to get him help.
Very
so
good.
If you flip the narrative to we're going to help your uncle, we're going to help your stepdad or your grandpa or whatever, we need to get him help.
Right. Okay.
Right? Not like we're going to get him and he's going to go to jail. Okay. Because that's their biggest fear is they're going to go to jail or they're going to get in trouble and it's going to be all my fault. I know that's what I thought when I was little.
Yeah, that resonates with me as well. Yeah, no, that's really good to know because, I'm sure there's people out there struggling and this is so important for us to be able to shine the light on it as well and be able to talk about it. And I love that you use the word empower because we're all about empowerment here. And if there's words of wisdom, anything that you can share with young girls, young boys right now, just, in what you've learned in your experience, is there one word, just a little words of wisdom that you can share with their viewers and let them know that everything's going to be okay and that you can get through this? Yeah,
I do think that it's important to know that you're not alone. Right. Sometimes we think we're the only ones struggling through this. Mm-hmm. That's one thing I've learned is there's so many people out there that have either gone through or are going through the same thing. So you're not alone, and there are tons of people like you. Okay. And all of, the people that I've come across in law enforcement that want to come alongside victims of crime and lift them out of it. Mm-hmm. And the secret that you might be holding inside is what's going to kill you, not what happened to you.
Right.
It's bearing the burden of keeping that inside of you.
Right.
Is what can eat away at you and cause physical ailments and stress.
That's right.
And if you, I always often say that like, the scene of the crime, right? Especially if you're sexually abused, right? Is really, the scene of the crime is in your body. Mm-hmm. And eventually it's in your mind.
It is.
Why didn't I do this? It's the replaying of things. Right? That's
absolutely. 100%.
When we replay these thoughts. And what I would like to tell everyone is you can stop that. Mm-hmm. You don't have to live with these thoughts. Yeah. And the first step towards getting rid of it, replaying in your mind, is to tell someone. Mm-hmm. If you can muster the courage to tell someone what happened to you, it literally can free you.
Yes.
It's like me.
Amen to that.
It used to be hard for me to, talk about it. I kept it inside for so long. Once I told my mom, once I spit it out when I was 18, and I've repeated it after that, I don't even feel the pain of it anymore.
Right. I do think once you get it out and you've talked about it, because it's, that thought of embarrassment too, and always wanting to be everything to be perfect. And also, you have that, a lot of people have this, and this was one of the things that I experienced was you don't share your dirty laundry with the public. You don't tell people about your stuff. What happens here is private. You don't go tell people about these things. So, it makes you the bad guy again. And so then you're holding this thing in and you're not supposed to say anything. And if you say anything, you're going to get in trouble, and then you're going to get them in trouble. So I'm I'm glad we touched on that part too, because that's very important, because you're always feeling like as the victim, you're kind of like the bad guy and you don't want to get everybody in trouble. So what are your thoughts on the word forgiveness?
Wow. Well, I definitely believe in forgiveness. And forgiveness is really for you. It's not for the perpetrator or whoever's wronged you. Right. Right? When you forgive someone, right, you are freeing yourself, not them. And just because you forgive someone doesn't mean you have to forget what they did. That's right. It doesn't mean like, that you can't like seek justice against them, either criminally or civilly. It just means that you're not going to hold on to this pain anymore. And so the only one you're hurting by not forgiving is you. Yeah. And the other thing is, I believe forgiveness, you have to forgive people. Like God commands you forgive people because none of us are perfect. I've done a lot of dumb things. I've done a lot of things I shouldn't, right, in my life. I mean, we all have, if we're all honest, right? Yeah. And it doesn't have to rise to the level of murder. You don't have to kill someone to be, needing of forgiveness yourself. Right. But, if you've engaged in gossip, if you've wanted what other people have, if you've been petty or, there's a zillion,
and so on,
greedy, right? There's 1,000 different sins. Sin is sin. We all need to be forgiven. And so we need to forgive other people. Nobody's perfect. Right. And even the molester who molested me, right? I don't know his backstory. I'm not saying like it absolves him of what he did, but if I hold on to that pain and that anger and that bitterness, the only person that's hurting is me. And I would rather use that experience to help other people. And as soon as you start doing that, you see the value in what happened to you. It makes you scrappy.
Exactly. Right? I love that. And we're empowering young people too, and, the next millennials and the next generations. And even though we've been through things, we still can be successful. It goes to show Heather's in this beautiful position of being a high profile attorney and, a great mother and great wife. And just, you're working on yourself continuously. And I love that. And I admire that about you and respect that about you, because it's great to watch. You suit up and you show up every single day, and you're not only giving to other people, but you're also giving to yourself as well. And that's a key, because we talked about self-love, and I share about it every single day, because if you don't love yourself, then you can't give it away to other people. So I'm excited for the book. So we've got 2025. We're starting this year really strong. You've got your book coming out, which we're going to find on Amazon, right?
You can buy it on Amazon. It's called Defeating the Darkness. Right. And it is true survivor stories and a prosecutor's playbook on how to get back your power through the justice system. Okay. And you can buy that on Amazon, and tune into the podcast if you can. I got a couple TV shows coming out on Hulu, but
okay. So how do we find you on social media? Tell me your social media handles. Is it Heather Brown? Heather Brown Law. That's your Instagram, right? And then are you on Facebook? So we don't use Facebook a lot, but you can look her under Heather Brown, and Heather obviously Brown you look her up law.
If you go to www.heatherbrownlaw.com, you'll find my website, which has all the links that go to all the social media handles and the the TV stuff that I've been doing, and that's fun, and it's just fun stories. And
I'm excited to see. I'm excited to read the book too. So you guys definitely want to pick up a copy of the book. Go and follow our friend Heather Brown, Downtown Heather Brown, on her podcast, Defeating the Darkness. We definitely love seeing her shine the light on people and sharing her experience, her strength, and her hope to empower other people and really just show you that life is incredible if you choose it to be. Amen. And I'm so grateful for your friendship. And the first episode, we're happy here, Life Unleashed with TLC with Heather Brown. And make sure you follow, you guys. We got books coming out. We got all these things coming out. And we've got many podcasts coming up every week now. So you can follow me, Life Unleashed with TLC. Also, TLC Unleashed or Traci Lynn Cowan across the board. So we'll see you next time. Thanks for coming on the show, Heather.
Thanks for having me.
She's a warrior, a survivor, and it's all because of God. She's a teacher and a healer, and it's all because of God. She's sassy, full of fire, with a heart that's made of gold. She will help you build your body, and it's so good for your soul.